not that many people are wearing smartwatches right now. It's around 3% of the population at the moment. But it is growing. So my name's Steve Meller. I am the Managing Director of Clicked Research Agency. I'm going to be talking to you today about wearable technology. Just one slide on us. We're a full-service agency. We specialise in all things digital, really. So we have 5 streams of business. First of all, digital strategy, audience analysis, and then we usually do lots of research within communications and design, lots of usability testing and biometrics, and we do lots of return on investment measurement as well. So if you are interested in any of the services that we provide, you can come and see me afterwards. But that's just the one slide about us today. And now about wearable technology. I'm going to talk today about 3 things really. Who is using it? Who are these people? And exactly what are they interested in using it for? And then I'll finish with a focus on finance. And banking in particular. Just a bit about the study as well that we draw the information from. This study is a biannual study. It's been taking place for the last year. We interview people, 1,000 people per wave, and each time we embark on in situ conversations as well with users. And out of that, we have created a segmentation. I'll be talking to you about the segmentation as well today. The devices that we cover, you can see there on the chart. We generally cover smartwatches, activity trackers, sports watches, the kind of Garmin types of sports watches are the most popular of that type of product. Smart glasses as well, and most recently, smart clothing. So what I'd like to do just to begin with is give you just 1 minute to read a statement. Now this is a fictitious day in the life of a guy called John Davies who is using wearable technology, and I'll just give you 1 minute to read it. We use this statement in our survey, and afterwards I'll explain a bit more about how we use it and why it's important. Okay, so you can see there are around 15 different activities or benefits or apps or different types of things that you can, or John has used within that day. And all of those benefits are in fact available right now, or they're being beta tested to be available in the very near future. I think it would be really interesting for me as well to see if anyone in this room has got a piece of wearable technology that they currently use. Could you put your hand up if you do? Okay, so what was that? That's probably about, I don't know, 10% of the people, maybe a bit more. What we found and what we've realised is around 10% of the people in the UK are currently using wearable technology. And basically, that's been growing biannually, and we're seeing that trend rise. And around 20% are extremely interested in owning wearable technology. There are 2 trends I think I'd like to point out that are particularly interesting. The first is that for females, wearable technology ownership is rising. Okay, guys are still owning more wearable technology than females, but it's actually fairly equal in comparison with what it was about a year ago. And the second thing is extreme interest in wearable technology is rising for females more than guys. So the other thing to point out is the older generation, anyone over the age of 34, are proportionately more interested or extremely interested in owning wearable technology as well. And when we talk about extreme interest, we talk about people answering 9 or 10 out of 10. So it really is a very sort of crystallized point of view there. Now, with regard to how long they've owned, people generally you'll find would have owned for around 6 months or less. It seems to be around 58% of people have owned for 6 months or less. So that means it is a relatively new category. And the big issue in the category and for wearable devices is lapsed usage. You can see from the chart here that over half of people have lapsed since they've bought a wearable device, they've lapsed using it. And that's a big issue for the industry. They tend to be younger owners, and around 60% or so will lapse within 3 months. And there's a big reason for that, I think, which is that people are just unsure about what this can do for them. If you take, for example, the best-selling piece of wearable technology on Amazon, it's a Garmin Vivo Fit. There are about 78 questions that people have asked about that. And if you contrast that with the best-selling laptop, it's around 34 questions, and the best-selling smart TV is only around 28 questions. So it just shows you that people really are in the dark about these devices and what these devices can do for them. When we actually ask people whether they've lapsed, well, they do confirm that to a great extent. They tell us that it's unnecessary to them, they're bored with it, it's not a device which has impacted their life in any great measure. So that's the big issue in the industry. But in terms of those who are still using wearable devices, people talk about it very positively. They're really interested in talking to their friends about it. They're advocates of the technology as well. And they're very keen to talk to people in a very positive sense. So why are people using this technology? So when we started the study about a year ago, we found that people were really polarized in their views around why they would want to wear a piece of wearable technology. So some wanted it for health measurement. And we found, for example, around 12% of people are really interested in using it to monitor their health, monitor their heart rate, for example. We've also found, with regards to communication, some people are particularly interested in that. And we found around 10% of people are particularly interested in using their wearable device to keep up with SMS and social media. 16% are interested in navigation. That seems to be one of the more interesting benefits of owning a piece of wearable technology. And one of the more futuristic pieces of or usages of wearable technology might be this example from Microsoft, which is the HoloLens. This basically is available on augmented reality glasses. In this example, you can see that this lady is receiving a call from her dad. Her dad can see what she's doing. She's trying to mend the sink, and he's giving her advice. And around 11% are interested in that type of benefit from owning a piece of wearable technology. And finally, I think really we just have to acknowledge that people are interested in making a statement. They're interested in just looking cool. Wearable technology is moved from something which was fairly niche a couple of years ago. With regard to fitness trackers, they're perhaps becoming much more mainstream these days. And with that, I think we're beginning to see people fragment, as all audiences and categories do. Customers generally start to fragment, and for that reason, we created a segmentation. So our segmentation is is comprised of around 6 different segments. We've done the usual. We've used demographics, but we've also included behavioural data, attitudinal statements. We've also connected their drivers and the way they use, for example, social media, all of their activities that they take part in. And we've seen that there are some big differences in the types of people that are using wearable technology. Now, I haven't got time to talk about all of these different segments today, but what I'd like to do is just talk about 2. The first is competitive FT, or competitive full-timers. You can see they all agree with the statement, I think I'm a competitive person. So basically, these guys are middle-aged, predominantly male. They like to take part in competitive activity. You can see some of the statements that they have agreed with in terms of extreme interest. There's a real range there of performance tracking, as well as health benefits and information. I think the key thing to keep in mind here, though, is that these guys aren't just interested in competing with other people. They're interested in competing with themselves and achieving their own personal goals. So in the study, we've interviewed a guy called Simon, who we feel fits this segment quite nicely. Simon is a company owner. He's got a Garmin Forerunner, and he loves that piece of technology because it's got a virtual runner on it. And that virtual runner will nudge him, give him a haptic vibration on his wrist when he slows down. And for that reason, he feels it's really beneficial to him personally, and it motivates him on his run. But as you can see, he's really keen as well on what he calls a smart hub. And that can be ultimately a piece of software which connects all of the data feeds from various devices that he may own in the future. But as far as he's concerned, he's not interested in health. He's interested in being mentally competitive. Another segment of interest I thought today to talk about would be working mothers. And they are different in that they have a range of interest, a wider range of interests in terms of the benefits that wearables can provide. You can see there that there's quite a few different statements which are of interest to them. You'll see as well that the figures are higher for the competitive FT. They're in the 20s, here they're in the 30s. And you can see if I take your attention to the second one down, having location information about friends or relatives to track them is particularly interesting to these guys. But at the very bottom there, giving me how-to instructions as well, for when I complete tasks. That Microsoft HoloLens benefit is something that working mothers are particularly interested in. So Victoria is a working mum who we again felt fitted this particular profile. Now she currently has a Jawbone, an activity tracker, and she describes herself as someone who's on a permanent diet, and that's very useful for her in that respect. But you can see from the statement there that she really wants an Apple Watch. And she's also quite confused as well because it says, it looks beautiful, you wouldn't have to take your mobile out with you. Well, actually you do. Of course you do. Unfortunately, it's perhaps, there's only one product on the market which you don't need to take your smartphone out with you, which is a Samsung product at the moment. Of course, things may change in the future. But the key thing here is that there's a bit of confusion in the category, and that confusion can lead to a much longer purchase journey. And also there are lots of barriers on that journey, and these are the key barriers that we've picked up. And I think relating back to the panel discussion there's a huge amount about data privacy and security, which I think is hugely important. But that's then followed by practical considerations. What we found, though, is those barriers will rise and fall in relation to the category that we're talking about. So we track around 39 different benefits in the survey, and they are across all sorts of different categories: retail, communications, but you'll find that the barriers rise in particular for finance. And when people are thinking about finance, they'll begin to get much more nervous about using wearable technology. So I'll talk about finance now, but just before I do, I just think it's important to ensure that we take into consideration the role that screens play in our lives these days. Finance generally is an activity that will take place on a laptop. I think over the years, devices and screens have matured now, and they're positioned. People position screens to do certain tasks. So on the whole, finance takes place on the laptop. It's true to say that your mobile phone is much more personal, and perhaps people will do their finance in terms of banking on their mobile phone, but it tends to be something which is much more about the laptop and the desktop. So I suspect that when people start to think about their smartwatches in particular, they'll probably position it here, somewhere in between a personal device, because by its nature it's very personal, and also fairly close to a tablet because it's probably about information and entertainment a bit more than more serious activities. So that really is quite a big, I think, conceptual issue for finance and for banking in particular. So I've got a video now. This is Estelle. She's 32 and she owns a smartwatch, and she's just going to talk now about the idea of banking on a smartwatch.
So looking at my bank account information or having my bank account information, I think it's going one step too far, whereas being able to pay for items with a cap limit is nice. I mean, it's a bit like having contactless payment already. So again, it's about convenience and ease.
And why do you think it's gone too far, having your bank account information on your smartwatch?
When I'm buying a coffee, I don't need to know my bank account information. I'm happy to pay the minimal amount.
But the idea that you can see your bank balances and the different amounts that have been coming in and out of your bank account for the past few days, for example.
I will probably sign into online banking for that because it's secure and safe. I think that's just having one more access point for your bank information to be divulged to probably the wrong hands.
Okay, so she makes 3 points really. The first is that she thinks banking information on her watch is a step too far. Secondly, that she's nervous about the privacy, but most importantly, I think, is that there's no need for it. I've already got access points. I've got my smartphone and I've got my laptop, and that's the way that I will read my banking information. Thank you very much. But actually, that is the biggest barrier, and we found when we've been talking to finance companies about how to overcome this, that is a surprise for them, and actually they need to overcome that with the use of apps which play to the strengths of wearable devices. So when app developers do think about preparing and creating apps for wearable devices, they think in terms of the concept of glances. Glances generally are 3 to 5 seconds, and when you are glancing or using your smartwatch or any wearable device, if it's, for example, an activity tracker, you'll generally give it 3 to 5 seconds, and that means that an app developer has that time to convey the information. Now, the key issue for Estelle was that she was unable to comprehend how that information could look, and I think if she had seen, for example, this app from Barclays, which is in beta at the moment, maybe she would have thought again about the usefulness of that particular app and that information. So with regard to how she feels about it, and I think the way in which the finance industry can learn from this type of information, they just need to think about playing to the strengths of wearable devices with regard to app development, which is making sure it's convenient, very fast and very intuitive as well. So that's pretty much what I had to say today. I'll just conclude though by talking about how I see the future for wearable devices and how the category can grow, and apps in particular can grow that work on wearable devices. So we track all types of wearable technology, and on the whole, device manufacturers talk about the tasks that you can perform on these smartwatches and activity trackers and other types of wearable devices. But really it's a means to an end, okay? We need to understand the reasons why people would not want to leave their smartwatches or other devices at home. And therefore we need to tap into the emotions that people have around devices. We want them to be attached to their wearable devices as much as they are with their smartphones. I think the only way to do that really is to tap into the emotions. And I've got one final video, which is from another person that we've interviewed in our study called Sandra. Now Sandra is watching the Apple ad. So Irene's going to very kindly play the Apple ad and then click on the video of Sandra watching it, and then afterwards you'll hear what she has to say with regard to how emotional it could potentially be. Tell me about that one.
Oh, see, I really like that. For me, it's all about the things you love, all about the people that you love, all about keeping in contact, and it being showing how you feel about one another. For me, that's a really nice. As I say, I was sitting there feeling like, oh God, I'm grinning, which is a bit silly, really, for an advert.
Thank you.